Cognition is based on perception, inference and culture. If you haven't done so, I suggest you listen to the previous video because this one follows on from it. We're looking at the vrittis. These are the thoughts and feelings which our awareness identifies with, our awareness is sucked into identifying with. And they're basically cognition. How do we know what we know? And this one tells us we perceive things. We've got our senses, we perceive things. And we make inferences. We see the sun coming up in the morning. It comes up every morning. So we assume it's always going to carry on doing so. This is part of our reality. We have a sense of time in accordance with this, and so on. And also our reality is very much determined by our culture and traditions, by our education. So this is our picture of reality. This is our conventional picture of reality. It's the consensus reality, which we are affected by to a greater or lesser extent. Spiritually, we're not interested in this. Spiritually, we're not interested in cognition. Our awareness identifies with the cognitive process, and we have to drop this altogether and come back to our pure awareness. This is samadhi. In Sutra 6, this pramana is often referred to as a valid cognition, correct information. But again, I have to say, we're not interested in this. Patanjali is not exhorting us to abide in valid cognitions. And as I said in the previous video, this is one of 5 categories of vritti. But it's not a category. This sutra and the 4 that follow it are elaborations of the same thing. They're all elaborations of cognition. Because all cognition is imprecise. It is only a model of reality. And any cognition, any conception, is essentially a misconception. But this is what we do anyway. And this takes us to Sutra number 8, to do with vipariyaya, which is sometimes understood as an invalid cognition, or confusion, misapprehension. So Sutra 8, there is a misapprehension of the fact, not based on the evidence. And this is when we elaborate. In the previous video I mentioned the example of falling in love. And perhaps the object of our affections displays a certain kindness towards us. That's the objective fact. But then we will take that fact as a sign of that person's mutual feeling for us. So this is the vipariyaya. This is the misapprehension. And this leads into Sutra 9. This is fueled by imagination and insubstantial arguments. So we start playing it over in our imagination. Until Sutra 10. It is now a dream reality, completely independent of the original fact. And the whole thing is built on memory. Taking us to Sutra 11. Memory is used to reinforce the misapprehension. So it seems to me that Patanjali is giving us a very useful tool here. And you might find my understanding or interpretation here a little bit dubious. But I ask you to consider or have a look at some other translation. For example, I've interpreted Sutra 10, which refers to nidra or sleep, as a state of dissociation whereby our constructed reality is independent of the the consensus cognitive reality. It could apply to being asleep, but it's something which is inherent in the moment. This state of sleep is the state that we are actually in at a particular moment. Let me read out Shyam Ranganathan's translation of Sutra 10. This is the Penguin Classic translation. Deep sleep is the morally evaluatable character of mentality conditioned by the relationship between the awareness of nothing and nothingness. Now it's a little unfair of me just to pluck this translation at random, but we're talking about sleep here. Now, Shyam Ranganathan understands Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as a work of moral philosophy, so perhaps that translation is of some use to moral philosophers, but to spiritual practitioners it's completely useless. We have to apply it to the present moment, because this is this choice we've got. We can either be in samadhi or we're caught up in the vrittis. And the vrittis are described as being either klishta or aklishta, which is normally translated as afflicted or non-afflicted, painful or not painful. And this is important because this is the little marker. Whatever you're feeling at the moment is a marker telling you that you're identifying with vritti rather than being in samadhi. Patanjali has given us this ladder to help us climb out of our vritti down to samadhi. Every situation which is not samadhi can be understood in terms of these 5 vrittis.